Good night, viewers, and welcome to this another program of breaking down the issues. Before I get into the topic for discussion tonight, let me remind viewers that this program comes to you every Thursday night from 18:30 hours to 20 hours. The official host of this program is the Honorable Shurwayne Holder, Member of Parliament, Shadow Minister of Natural Resources, and Chairman of the People's National Congress Reform. Tonight on this program, we are going to look at the topic PPP corruption, progress or retrogression. My name is Dennis Jai Kran, and I'm going to be moderating this program tonight as I would normally do every Thursday night. Before I introduce the host of this program, let me just say that we are going to discuss a few areas as it relates to PPP corruption, progress or retrogression. We are going to look at corruption in the Adriana Young matter, police versus the family and people. Then we are going to look at the Appropriation Bill 2025 and the level of corruption in spending. We are going to look at corruption in the awards of contracts. And then we are going to look at corruption as it relates to the number of slush funds. During this program, we would also look at the number of clips and pictures that the Honorable Shurwayne Holder, Member of Parliament, would explain to us, meaning the viewers. At this stage, I want to now introduce formally our host for this program, the Honorable Shurwayne Holder, Member of Parliament and Shadow Minister of Natural Resources. Operator, can we bring in the host, the Honorable Shurwayne Holder? Good night, MP, and
Good
welcome
night.
again to another program of breaking down the issues. And early on, I was saying that the topic for tonight would be PPP corruption, progress or retrogression. And then I would have outlined four areas in which we are going to touch. And so the four areas would be corruption in the Adriana case, police versus the people and the family, the Appropriation Bill 2025, and the levels of corruption in spending, corruption, the third one, corruption in the award of contracts, and the fourth would be slush funds as a part of corruption. And then there are going to be a number of clips I would want to believe that you'd have an opportunity to be able to explain. So, welcome once again, Honorable Holder, to this program.
Yes, thanks for joining me. Almost didn't make it. Um, as you would know, I have a busy schedule at this time, but we try to honor our commitment to the people of Guyana to bring this program every week so that we can disseminate information in a way that the ordinary people can understand what is happening in our country today.
Thank you very much. So, let us go into the first area of concern and the corruption area that I would wish that we can explain to the public. And so, the question I'm going to pose to you, MP, is that recently there was this total engagement not only in Guyana but internationally of this Adriana Young demise. And those engagements locally would have caused us to believe that there is corruption at that level as it relates to this matter, meaning the police versus the family and the people. And so, if you can show us, take us through those stages to point out the levels of corruption at each level.
All right, thanks, Dennis. I'm happy to engage on this matter. The issue of Adriana Young's murder, and I'm calling it a murder because it is a murder in my own opinion. Last week I said to you and to all of Guyana that the police force were targeting persons who deemed it a murder. Well, I'm deeming it a murder in my own opinion, based on everything that I would have seen, and we as Guyanese people would have seen. This case is unprecedented in recent times. It is not unprecedented in Guyana, but it's unprecedented in recent times because from 2015 to 2020, we saw nothing close to this. And though we might have seen um, an emergence, a re-emergence of extrajudicial killing and unexplained deaths and corruption mixed with corruption in the police force, we have not seen it at this level for the past 5 years. I believe in the past 5 years, it would have been there would have been that reemergence and it would have been increasing exponentially to get to this point today of the situation of Adriana Young. We have seen other cases in the past, like Oren Boston, one of the first in 2021. We'd have seen a number of others right through, and last week we chronicled it. But Adriana's murder, I think, exceeded all of those that we would have seen in the past. The level of corruption, the level of cover up, and mind you, I'm saying this because we would have witnessed it play out in the public domain on camera, on video. Social media would have increased exponentially over the last few years, and I believe that is what allowed us or gave us the opportunity to really have a closer look. So it might not be a case that it is unprecedented, as I'm saying, but what we've seen, what we were able to see through persons with smartphones, through video footages from CCTV cameras, through proactiveness by public spirited citizens and some sections of the media, we were able to gather much more information than what we would have gathered in the past. As it relates to what happened overseas, all would recognize that the body, after much delay, was allowed to go overseas for another post-mortem. And immediately what we saw was the police putting out a statement as though the case is closed, that the first post-mortem was conclusive. Um, Suddenly, this occurred suddenly as Adriana was being examined once again. But what I would like the public to understand is that a second post-mortem, whenever you do a second post-mortem, it is to more to cross-check what was done initially in the first post-mortem. And that is what the pathologist explained, because that body would have already been tampered with, if we can use that word. You would have already had a first post-mortem, and on top of that, you would have had some embalming. So you would have foreign substances being introduced to the body. And so the second post-mortem would not have benefited from a body that would have been untouched, untroubled. And so you do a second post-mortem to more or less cross-examine the accuracy of the first post-mortem. And I was taken back by the PPP trying to spin that, because the pathologist said at the end of that post-mortem that the first was done. She believes that the first was thorough. Now, that didn't question the pronouncements, the first set of pronouncement. What it brought into question is how the process was carried out. It was focused on the process, not the pronouncements, so to speak. And so she would have had to examine um, what areas, how they went about procedurally, um, how, in terms of procedure, how they carried out that post-mortem, which organs were examined, what cuts were made, if those things were done well. And she said, look, those were thorough. What she did say, and what the PPP friendly media are not saying, is that no post-mortem um, actively or should conclusively um, say that somebody drowned. I think if you listen back to what she said drowning is something determined by elimination. She also said, to back it up, that you can have water in the lungs, even if that body was placed there in the pool, or submerged in whatever, in a river, in a pool, whatever. You can have water in the lungs. So you can't definitively say that the person drowned. Is more of an elimination process based on wider evidence presented. And the wider evidence that was there is that she was found in a pool. And so if you saw water in the lungs, you can conclude that she drowned. But nothing in that post-mortem, neither the first nor the second, said or spoke to where she drowned. They didn't take samples, at least so far. I'm not aware that they took samples of the pool. The pool, as we saw it, it was drained after. Strangely, it was drained after. I don't know if they took samples. Um, I don't know about if they did, the integrity of that process, because we saw what the police did. We saw persons taking off their body cameras. We saw persons with wet marks up to their knees, which suggested that they could have they could have um, went into the pool that morning, just before Adriana's body was found. And some speculated that that person could have participated in in putting that body in the pool. We don't know. We don't have video footage of it. What we have is the bare pictures surfacing on social media. And so that is what that doctor concluded. She also made some remarks which persons are saying, oh, she shouldn't speculate, but she gave them anyway, because in the context of saying that you had to eliminate um, certain things to come to conclude that this person drunk. And based on what she would have learned and what she would have seen on social media or wherever, she would advise that uh, a thorough investigation is done to ascertain whether this child was murdered or not. That is what she said. I saw some of them lashing out against the pathologist, saying that she shouldn't speculate. But she made it very, very clear that you cannot, you come to the conclusion of drowning after you would have eliminated certain things. And certainly foul play cannot be ruled out. I think that is what the message that she was attempting to convey, that you cannot rule out foul play based on everything that the public would have seen. And so she urged the Guyana police force to thoroughly investigate that matter. And I too would want to join with the good doctor, the good pathologist, to urge the government of Guyana and urge the police force, the government of Guyana, who seem to be complicit in a cover up of whatever transpired in this matter, and the police force who either through corruption or incompetence or both would have failed Adriana Young, would have failed her family, and would have failed in the general execution or delivery of their duties to ensure that this matter is thoroughly investigated and that you can have true closure at the end of that process. So we don't expect this case to just be tossed under the rug, but to be dealt with in a serious way. And I should say to the public that any government formed by us, any government that we are or would be a part of 3 months from now, 90 days from now, or thereabout, we will ensure that we get down to the bottom of this. We wouldn't operate like a finale and bluff this nation and bluff the family to say we leave no stone unturned or spare no resources. We are going to do it. We are going to have multiple investigations as far as they lead, as far as they go. We are going to do it. Whatever help we need, if we need um, assistance from the FBI, if we need assistance from any of those reputable organizations, we are going to do it. And we are going to also ensure that there is a thorough investigation of the conduct of the force with respect to this matter, because Dennis, we can't continue to have matters like these. We saw a number of them play out over the years where there is no justice. And so we cannot continue to have the force operate in this manner. We are not going to target police officers. We believe that there are a lot of good police officers in the force, but there is need for serious reform. There is need for serious leadership, and we believe that if you have if the head is rotten, if the head is rotten, and we know who's the head, we know where the heads are at the various level. We have a commander in chief, and we have a commissioner of police. We have others at heading at certain departments and certain regions. We have to deal with that. If we have a rotten head, then the entire body will be rotten. We have to clean that up. We have to bring serious reform, and there is no place better to reform or to begin with those reforms than the head, those persons that head the police force. Guyana police force will have a new head in the next 3 months, as long as we take government, which we expect to do in the next 3 months. We will have a new commander in chief, and we will have a new head of the police force. And so the public can expect a more professional police force as we had in the last 5 years. And they can expect and look forward to this murder being being aggressively pursued under our administration.
GMP, having established that level of corruption as it relates to the Adriana Young's case, I want to stretch this a little further. And I'm going to point and ask you this question. And the straightforward question to this is, had it not been for the activism of social media, do you think that this matter would have concluded within the shortest possible time to allow persons that might have been involved to be set free of a situation like that?
Well, certainly, and even with the activists on the ground, we see the direction where the police force went, and we see the direction where the government of Guyana went in terms of its complicit behavior with respect to this matter. Persons, as I said last week, the little girl went missing, and everybody rather refused to act. Even the hotel, I saw today somebody associated with the hotel a clip, and with a sad piece of music with a person in the hotel saying, um, you know, persons. I saw a clip there which is not related, but I want to definitely come to that at the end, to the back end of the program, because we are dealing with corruption. Yes, but I was saying, I saw a clip there with persons in the hotel, maybe somebody relating to the owner, the management, and with some sad music playing, and they're saying, the caption is, "Where do we go from here?" or "Where do I go from here?" And immediately my thought was, where should Adriana's family, who are clearly being denied justice, where should they go? Where should they go? They have lost, a life was lost. And the hotel, in my view, they did not do what they should have done in such a manner. I'm told that persons approached them and said, "Look, this little girl is missing from the pool," and they had persons in that pool still partying, still enjoying themselves until about 10 o'clock in the night. The police also refused to act in a professional manner and to do what they had to do. When they eventually came, they operated as though they wanted to protect the hotel rather than ensure that they do everything possible, stop whatever was going on at the hotel, and ensure that you have a thorough search. And so, if it weren't for the activists, I think this thing was going to be shut down quickly. This body probably would have appeared outside of this hotel, as we saw um, what seemed to be attempts by persons to, in vehicles, to exit the hotel with only God knows what they had in those vehicles. And then after persons would have demanded that those activists on the ground, public spirited citizens, not political activists, but just neighbors, familiar people, people who cared, people who suspected that something was not right. After those persons stood there for many hours and demanded that any vehicle leaving the premises had to be searched, and started to agitate to go into that hotel, then things started to get serious. But even so, games were being played. You could have seen from the video footages that games were being played. This thing was one big cover up. And had it not been, based on your question, had it not been for those persons on the ground, I'm convinced that this body would have appeared maybe at some road corner, or maybe at the seaside or somewhere, or in some trench, and then you would have heard that this child drowned. The same, in a similar way that we have heard that she um, she would have drowned. Um, I was particularly disappointed when I heard an alarm, when I heard the president say, "Well, forced drowning was ruled out," and then we subsequently learned that that was not so. That the pathologist never stated that. At least I've not seen any report, any official report from the pathologist saying that um, this was forced drowning is ruled out, or there is no evidence um, in with respect to that. So that is to answer your question. I hope that I would have successfully answered it
Yeah, adequately addressed.
adequately.
Adequately addressed. Thank you for that part, dear. But let us move on to a second area of corruption. Recently, between earlier this year, Parliament, the National Assembly, so to speak, would have followed the necessary procedures. And at the end of the presentation of the budget, the debates, and the other stage of allowing the Committee of Supply to sit and to make the necessary approvals for budget agencies to have their level of spending, that appropriation bill would have been passed. And so agencies, budget agencies, had an opportunity based on what would have been presented earlier, starting from 2024, there about in July, when the budget cycle would have commenced, that appropriation bill would have been approved. MP, you are a very, very vocal person in the National Assembly. And very many times I recognize that you challenged spendings. And so, therefore, I want to ask you this question to point in the direction as it relates to having have that appropriation bill passed and agencies, budget agencies, would have had an opportunity to spend widely and in very many cases wildly, wide and wild, and so point in the direction or all the directions, because we dealing with PPP corruption, progress or retrogression. And so the first one, we cannot see that, but we can see the one that we speak to as it relates to retrogression. Point us in the direction of those levels of corruption in budget agencies.
Yeah, thanks. And I should say, unfortunately, the appropriations that we both, when I say both government and opposition, move to interrogate and to approve for the best interests of the people. Um, it is unfortunate that those sums that we approved to get in the National Assembly are being used in a way that, or in a way that was never, they were never intended to be used,
Mhm.
um, as we would have put them in the National Assembly. As you were speaking about today's topic, progress or retrogression, and I'm just swaying a little here. There is this talk by a few persons who chose to support or to endorse the PPP, some of them working with the government, some even once were on the opposition side. And the thing that they talk about, the reason for going to the PPP or for supporting the PPP is progress. This progress that they would have seen. And that is why I think the topic progress or retrogression is so important. It's so important at this stage. I want to say to the viewers, and I'm happy that you brought up the budget and what we would have passed, the appropriation bill. In 2015, I want to compare progress with retrogression. In 2015, our budget, our national budget, annual budget was $221 billion. And if we compare that, or I should give it at the end of the term as well. That's at the beginning of the term. In 2019, our last full budget was $300.6 billion. That was our budget. So we moved from 221, 232 to around 250, and we went up in that manner to 300 billion over our 5-year period. And if you examine what we would have done with that small amount of money, if you compare it, and the government is comparing, they have in 2025 $1 billion, close to $1.3 trillion they got in that appropriation bill. I believe it was 1,282 billion to be exact. That was the appropriation bill that we passed for the budget, the 2025 national budget. But we need to examine what we did with a 220 billion as against a trillion, which is 1,000 billion. It's 10 times. It is more than 5 times. Sorry, 5 times more than what we had in 2015. But yet, in our stint of government, we started to do proper roads, for example, and this is what I want to touch on. We started to do proper roads. All would recall the state of our roads. All would recall, even when the PAP did roads, the kind of corruption that surrounded it, the kind of quality that we got, or lack of quality that we got. They were making biscuit roads all over this country. And you still had farm to market roads being very in a dilapidated state. You had other infrastructure, the police stations, the waterfront stellings, etc., were in a dilapidated state. And we came in with a very small 221 billion budget, and we tightened our grip on corruption. We practically banished or vanquished drugs runnings in this country. And we ran a clean government. We had good governance. And so if we zone in back on infrastructure, we saw proper roads being developed all across this country. We saw police stations being rehabilitated. We saw that waterfront, for example, right here in Region 2 where I'm living. We saw that transform. I'm sorry, I don't have the pictures there from what it was in 2014 to what we did with it. And we transformed the landscape, the face of this country with a very, very small budget. And so when you compare that with what is happening now, with the kind of money that they have now, what they did was to embark on a friends, family, and favorite program, which unfortunately But those very monies that you're talking about, Dennis, those very monies that we appropriated, that 1 trillion, about $300 billion, they put it in the hands of friends, family, and favorites. I wish that the operator can pull up the contract, the Bellevue pump station. There should be a clip there, or a picture there to show the 182 uh, million dollars which was handed out to him, which forms a bigger part of the contract. The contract is, I think, 600 or 800 and about $860 million, and they doled out 160 million to this guy, who up to now, from since I think it's 2022 that contract was awarded, who in 2025 is still saying that the project is 10% complete. Well, if the operator can pull up that picture, I don't know if you can consider it. There is a picture there with some logs and so on the ground. Yes, 10. They're saying that 10%. This was recorded by the newspaper. They had to obviously take what was said to them, 10% of the work. But there is a picture there with an empty space with just maybe some wood on the ground and some concrete stuff on the ground, and that is it. No work was done. Practically no work was done. You had a little clearing, and that is it. I don't know if you consider this as 10% of the work. $182 million. Could you tell me if you're seeing $182 million in terms of work here? And this is critical. Now the government is so complicit. They are so corrupt. They are facilitating this. It is. Look, we have to point fingers at the president, the vice president, and their entire cabinet for what is happening there, because they approved. They gave their no objection to this, and this is their friend. It is no secret. And Irfan Ali, why I'm saying you have to point your fingers. People like to, some like to see him as the guy who's dancing Michael Jackson and picking mangoes and that kind of thing. But these are the things that we have to look at. When he called his sham 5:30 meeting, 5 o'clock meeting with contractors, did he call critic? Did you ever hear about TPU company? Did you ever hear? And these are the big defaulters. These are the big defaulters. We can look again and there should be clips there of another infrastructure project, the Hosororo School, $2.6 billion. That project is worth $2.6 billion, and there is a lot of talk about the benefits, and I don't doubt there. The school, you always have a need for new modern schools. We would have promoted that. You would recall, Dennis, we designed that school in Abramsville, that new modern school
Yes.
in Abramsville. The PVP ended up took over the project. So it is our vision, but we didn't engage in the level of corruptions, in the kind of corruption that we're seeing from this PVP. There was a complaint while we were in government for the Abramsville school, the new modern smart school, as we would have called it. There was a complaint, and you were the REO, and you brought a halt. The contractor said he was disenfranchised and by the award of the contract. And immediately, you were the REO, and you brought it to a halt for investigation. I clearly recall that. That is how, persons like to say, well, in every government there is corruption. There is always corruption all over the world, all over the country, but it is how you deal with it. And certainly the levels of corruption did not exist that we are seeing it today. We took decisive action, as you did, as an RU. As fast as a contractor made a complaint, you brought that contract to a halt. What they did, and they came in and took over the contract, and this was December of 2019. You brought that, I think, to a halt.
Yeah.
And by the time they took over the work, what they did was increase the sum. They put it back for the sham tender, and they increased the sum. I don't know if you recall that. They increased the sum by
Yeah.
some hundred and something $1 million. And so if we go back to this Osororo school, I don't know. There are pictures there. There is a picture there. I hope that the operator can pull it up. The school has been left abandoned for many, many months. There's nothing going on there, no equipment. We don't know how much of the money has been spent. And if this, obviously, this project will have to go back to retender again. And it would be no surprise if another 100 or 200 million dollars is added to it. And so we're in this position because of the Friends, Family, and Favorites program that the PPP embarked on over the course of 5 years, that they doled out a lot of these funds to their incompetent friends. And in some cases, their friends had too much on their chest that they could not do all this work at the same time, and they failed. But they're not calling out any of these persons. Rather, they are they would have allowed the projects to fail, and then they go back to retender. And we can look at many projects. You have the Conversation Tree project that went back to Are you hearing me all along?
Yeah, we missed you a while here, so you can go back on the
Uh,
conversation tree
maybe.
project.
Oh, yes. I was saying we have numerous examples. The Conversation Tree project is one that I think that had to go back to a new tender, part of that project. You have Critic, obviously. This project isn't going anywhere. Critics seem to be broke after that big fallout with the Mohammeds and others. And so that project seemed not to be going anywhere. You have this other project with the Hosororo school being left abandoned. And I saw Priya Manichan running out to say no, it is the project is on stream. You know, these people are very barefaced. You have the Bamia school. Every year they're saying it's 1% more to go. And we haven't heard anything about it. That was about $450 million awarded to their friends in the hits and jams. And so these guys are in trouble. And it is because of their corruption. And again, we have to look. Some people are saying, oh, they're supporting the PAP because of this progress. I don't know what progress they're talking about. You have more monies available, so naturally you will see more infrastructure, more infrastructural work. But you have to know what measure you're taking to determine whether it is progress or retrogression. When you look at it carefully, we're actually moving backwards because money is being wasted and the people are not benefiting. Another point on the budget and what we did in 2016, our budget was just $232 billion, and we were able to give our teachers, for example, a whopping 10% increase. Our teachers and public servants would have never had that kind of increase in recent history. I don't believe in the history of our country since independence. I don't think our teachers had the sort of increase that we gave during our time in office. And they love to say, oh, APNU didn't do anything and APNU introduced taxes and all these things. We gave our public servants a whopping 10% increase back in 2016. And I think at the end of our term, when you calculate it, the lowest workers got as much as 77% increase during our stint in office. Never before in the history of this country did any government do such a thing for their workers, who are the life and the organ of everything that is happening in terms of government, and your ability to deliver services to the people of Guyana. We took care of them. And you know what? With a budget, I'm sure this budget will go up. I saw just recently pronouncements on the oil and gas that we are bound to benefit about $2 trillion in the near future just from oil and gas. So very soon we will have even greater levels of cash available to do greater things for our people. And that is why we in the APNU have a remarkable plan. Aubrey Norton has been a key person in that team, crafting our strategic plan that focuses on empowering people, that focuses on putting money in people's pocket. Our people center development plan, as Aubrey Norton has labeled it. And so we intend to do a number of things and to bring real progress to Guyana when we take government in the next 3 months. And you would know, Dennis, we have one project that I like very much, is a 35% increase for our public servants. This is a commitment. We did we did it before. We gave our public servants up to 77%. When you calculate it cumulatively, when you accumulate all the increases, at least for the lower level of workers. So we are going to increase, give them an increase of 35%. We are going to increase pension, our pensioners, to $100,000. We believe that those persons that are elderly, that are on the pension establishment, the pensionable establishment, those persons that would have worked their life, their soul for this country, they need to have a good and comfortable life as they retire. And so we will increase the pension to $100,000. We intend to, the Tushaus, the Tushos in those indigenous communities, we are going to give them a significant increase. I think the leader did mention in his parliamentary speech not so long
Yeah.
ago during the budget debates that he will increase the Tushos salary, or the stipend as you call it, to $200,000. We believe that these persons are at the level of mayors. At that level, they have a lot of responsibility. They have to look over the welfare and interests of an entire community, whether it's health, education, infrastructure. These people have real responsibilities. And so you want the caliber of people being selected as Toshos and councillors for those communities to improve and to increase. And so with that, you want to offer something substantive that you can have that caliber of person. They can have a proper pay even as they carry out their duties and their functions. We are going to do, and this is real progress, not the retrogression that we have seen from PPP. We intend to pick up the bill for the lower class of people in terms of the light bill and water up to $10,000. We will pick up the tab for those persons, and an average household of three persons living together might be under 10,000. A man, a woman, and his child, or a woman and two children, single parent. We will pick up that bill up to $10,000. We'll pick that up to $5,000 for water. We intend to make University of Guyana free in the mainstream sense of being free. Not just the tuition, but we will offer student stipend for about 30,000 students. Those poorer class students who more than likely would struggle to, are struggling to make ends meet, but they want to go to university at the same time to elevate themselves. We are going to provide some student stipend. We are going to revise the whole curriculum and look at programs at the university that can match what is needed in society so that we can provide the tens of thousands of jobs. We can train persons for the tens of thousands of jobs, new kinds of jobs that will be introduced in the society. We have some remarkable programs, better programs, programs that, if implemented, will project real progress and not retrogression. You know, I was taken back the other day when I looked at Kaisuku, and the PPP, while in opposition, made so many promises to the sugar workers. After the APNU would have closed two estates, and we had a plan to convert those estates, diversify those estates. I think Wales would have become a coconut. Instead of sugar, we would have done coconut and some other things there. And we had some other plans for the other estates that were closed. The PPP did everything possible to convince the people living in the sugar belt that this was wrong. The APNU were wrong to do this, and that they will reopen these estates and make sugar great again. Well, surprise. Guess what? 5 years later, 5 years later, sugar is 10 times worse. And these guys are still seeking to blame the APNU for it. We made in 2019 92,000 tons with the three estates that were left open. A few months later, the PPP took office, took over those very three estates, and made just 47,000 tons, uh, about half, 50% less. This is a clear indication of their corruption and incompetence. I saw last week they said they finally stopped blaming the APNU because they recognize that 5 years on you can't continue to blame APNU every year, and so they said it was the rain that caused them not to make the target. Now, I don't know. Maybe rain didn't fall from 2015 all the way to 2020. You know, I just had to chuckle at this stupidity and this shamelessness. And I recall Irfan said that heads will roll, and the VP saying that heads will roll. Well, we're still waiting for those heads will roll. I believe the only heads that should roll are those the head of Irfan Ali, the head of Jagdeo, and his entire incompetent and corrupt cabinet. Those are the real heads that need to roll so that real progress can be experienced by the Guyanese people, that the Guyanese people can finally enjoy a good standard of living. A country where you have a police force that acts professionally and looks out for the interests of the people. A country where you have proper infrastructure being done and you're getting value for your money. A country where health service can be at a world-class level. Not that what we are getting now. Our education, and I should mention this point, we're talking again about retrogression against progress, and we're not seeing progress. I asked a colleague, I consider him to be a colleague or a friend. There is this guy that was in a few classes ahead of me at President's College, and he's been working with the state media. And it appears as though the PPP are now coercing all these people, maybe forcing them, I don't know, to endorse them. And so suddenly I saw him commenting negatively on something I said. And I had cause to check his page and recognize that he suddenly, in this period, started to promote Irfan Ali and the PPP. And I thought about it, and I asked him a few questions, including this: what progress are you talking about? And he said something about progress on his page. I said, you have to know how you're measuring progress, how progress is measured. Do you know, or are you happy with the fact that under the APNU, with that small budget, I just told you about the budget, we were able to move the matriculation rate, meaning those persons who graduate with 5 subjects or more at CSEC level, with 5 subjects, including maths and English. We met a rate of about 30 to 32% students passing. If you check all that would have graduated, if you had 5,000, or let's say you had a thousand students that wrote CXC in 2014, you had only about 300 of them, or less than 300 of them, uh, passing with 5 subjects, including maths and English. When we completed our stint in government by 2019, that rate went up to almost 50%. So you gone up to about 500 out of that thousand. About 50% were passing at that stage with the little resources that we had. If you check in 2020, or at least up to 2024, and you can verify this information, this is not something that I'm making up. You simply have to go to the back of the budget, as you would know, Dennis. You would know at the back of the budget would have all these information. They can't lie about it. And you check the matriculation rate, you will see that it has moved straight back to where it was. And that is the meaning of retrogression, returning to a previous state. And that is what this PPP has done. Even as they continue to boast about all the infrastructure, all the schools, the education system is failing. They're actually moving backwards. Less and less persons are passing with 5 subjects and more under this $1 trillion budget, under this government that tries to tell you that all is so bright and beautiful and we are moving forward. This is progress. It is not progress. It is retrogression. We are going backwards, although we have more monies. If you check the pass rate in the hinterland, and they love to talk about hinterland, if you check what is happening, Priya Manichan would have been harping about how many thousands of teachers that they are trained, and they in 2015 and in 2020, this is the amount, and oh, now they're training so many thousands and they're doing so many schools, so many hundreds of schools. Well, guess what? The pass rate is actually moving backwards. It's not moving forward. So while we see monies being spent, those monies are going into the pockets of friends, families, and favorites, and we are not getting any benefit, real benefit, in with respect to the people and our students. We are not seeing it. So I trust that I would have touched a little on infrastructure and education with respect to the budget.
Yes. Thanks very much, MP. I'm happy that you did establish the fact that also in corruption, we can count incomplete projects as part of corruption. And you would have pointed out a number of incomplete projects. And you know, recently, when the comrade leader visited with a team to Region 2, a number of incomplete projects areas were visited. The charity waterfront, that pub there, the charity market, the Sodi market, the nurses accommodation at Sodi, and the Anna Regina, whatever they call that place, either a playground, playfield, stadium, or what have you. started since 2021. And so that would help us to add to the level of corruption there is as it relates to incomplete projects. And so I want to ask you this question as we conclude this part of the discourse on the appropriation bill. You know, there are checks and balances as it relates to what we come to call award of contract just now. When contracts are awarded, and so one of the major checks and balances would have been the Office of the Auditor General. And I've always said that during the period 2015 to 2020, never in my period as a public officer recognized how proactive the Office of the Auditor General would have been. And I always said, I hope that based on situations, circumstances now, that they are as proactive. And so that is one of the checks and balances there, the Office of the Auditor General. The next one would be the Public Procurement Commission. And then the other one would be the Public Accounts Committee. And so if you lump those MP, show us a few things or ways in which we consider those as rampant corruption.
Look, I'm happy. I'm happy that you mentioned um, those organizations. Well, not necessarily organization. Those units that within the government and within the parliament that are supposed to act as the guardrail to ensure that there is transparency and accountability. I recall, and you're absolutely right. The Auditor General's office was very active, very proactive, and our administration um, ensured that we satisfy whatever was asked. We provided whatever information that they needed, whatever clarity that they needed to ensure that transparency and accountability was the order of the day. And that is why there weren't many projects that or many instances that persons could have actually pointed their fingers to during our stint. I cannot say to you that persons will not try, a contractor wouldn't try to do something, or some engineer or somebody wouldn't try to do something. But as I said, it is the way how it was dealt with, the way how you deal with corruption. Now, I find that the Auditor General from 2021 or 2, maybe 2022, has become more and more silent and have not been touching on some key areas. I understand, and you would know too, that they take samples, but then there are those obvious projects that the Auditor General would need to examine because they're in the public and everybody's talking about it. There's obvious corruption going on, and so the Auditor General's office would want to look at that. But we're not seeing that kind of proactiveness, and there's a reason for that. And I'm not casting my finger, pointing my finger, or casting a shadow on that office. I believe what is happening is the manifestation of dictatorship. Those persons cannot act independently. The government of the day is obviously directing them and steering them in a particular direction and blocking them from doing their job in a fair and transparent manner. So I believe that is why we're not seeing much or as much from the Auditor General Office, although we see corruption has ramped up maybe 10, 20 times over in these last 5 years. The Public Procurement Commission is another commission that has failed under this PPP. You will recall that prior to 2015, the PPP refused for many, many years to um, to operationalize the Public Procurement Commission, although it is there in the law, and they just refuse to bring on board that Public Procurement Commission because that is the commission that will look at complaints for contracts, etc. Now you had a number of complaints on these very corrupt contracts. The one at Bellevue Pump Station, many other pump stations, and other projects. But the Public Procurement Commission, through its PPP majority, because the opposition has, I think, two members there, but the PPP has a majority. And so the decisions, like what we're seeing at GCOM level, is the same thing that is obtaining at that level there at the PPC. And so they would railroad whatever investigation and then put out whatever statement they want to put out. They have failed to act. They're a toothless poodle, and they too, that is a mechanism that is established to ensure that corruption is subdued. But it's under this PPP government, that organization, that well, not organization, but that department, if I can call it that, cannot act. You have, then we come to the um the one at Parliament, that committee at Parliament, what you call it,
Public Accounts Committee.
the the Public Accounts Committee. Yes, that committee scrutinizes the public accounts, and that committee has powers to haul public officers before it. But what two things the PPP would have done over the last few years? One, they determined that they don't have confidence in the head, which comes from the opposition. So they started from the beginning, from the get-go. They determined who they wanted to head. And I'm not pointing fingers at anybody. We still have the opposition that is heading it. But I'm merely highlighting their intention to derail the work of the committee. And so even in that committee, while the opposition chairs it, the PPP still has a majority, a one-seat majority in that committee. And so they would have used it to change the quorum. Before, I think, is the chairman and any two members. Now you must have, I think it's 5 persons there, or they have specified you have to have persons from the government side, you have to have persons from the opposition side. They totally stymied the work of the Public Accounts Committee. The third thing that they did was to stymie the rate at which the opposition, or at the rate at which the committee rather, can look at the various years of public accounts. What you want to happen, you want the current accounts, or the scrutiny to be current. Right now, we are still looking at the coalition time. 5 years on, we are still stuck at examining coalition records. We're supposed to have in real time summoning an REO or some PS to appear in front of this committee to say, hey, what really transpired here last year before we get to the next budget, so that we can rectify any mischief. We can take whatever action immediately. Now, when you're now looking at 5 years ago accounts, when those officers would have gone, Dennis Jaikaran gone, all the other officers gone. You have new things happening, but you're not looking at that. You're trying to look at some accounts where Dennis can defend himself. Fortunately, you would have appeared and defended your track record, Dennis. But I'm saying we're looking at accounts of the past and not of the current. They don't want their track record to be scrutinized. They don't want before an election. You can see what would have transpired. They don't want those contracts to come up like critics contracts and all the under the table stuff that has been happening over the 5 years, all the corrupt practices. Like what we saw, and I should make reference to it because we're talking about public accounts and corruption. Just a few days ago, we saw um, that explosive revelation by Azruddin Mohammed, where he showed the text message, the record of his discussion with no other than the president of Guyana. And this is the Lamborghini gate we're talking about. And I'm certain that the operator had it. I saw him pull it up at one stage. Where, yes, he's saying there, and you can read, he's asking if I pay $50 million duty, would Stacia fight me down? Stacia is the commissioner for GRE, the tax boss for GRE. And I know him to be, and he was employed under the coalition and they kept him for whatever reason. But I know him to be a no-nonsense person, somebody that is supposed to have integrity. And I think that is why the question is being asked. Now, Azardine, as his text message or as his little live went, he told us and he told the nation that they had a phone call subsequently, and the president said, why you don't pay 25 million? Why you paying that much? 50 million is a lot of money. And he said, no, chief, when you calculate the tax, 50 million is okay. Now, the president, in my view, in my opinion here, is somewhat or allegedly facilitating transaction that should not occur. This is the president of Guyana, and he did say he met or spoke with the vice president as well, who directed him to the president. And there you have a discussion. And the president, according to Azruddin, he's saying that the president said, pay $25 million. This is how the PPP operates. This is how the friends, family, and favorite corrupt program. This is what they did for 5 years. This is what they did for 5 years. This was shocking. And you know, persons are out there, they put out their minions to defend this. I saw Joel Bagwandin, for example, stating that the minister Stacia, the commissioner, the GRA commissioner, falls under the purview of the finance minister, and the finance minister is a minister within the ministry of the presidency, and so it is the president who is responsible. That's nonsense. Even the minister of finance, or who is acting as finance minister, cannot get involved in that. That is corruption. That can be perceived as corruption. If we were to take what Azardine has said as the truth, then the president would be implicated. Now we're going with a court matter. There is a court matter here, an active court matter. I know that the president has immunity, but in such a matter, would the president be called as a witness? He should be. He should be. Because if you have evidence here and you have the accused saying in no uncertain terms that the president would have helped to facilitate this. And then we can look at what the president, I think, then is the president's response is critical. His response is critical. I don't know if the operator has it, but as I recall it, he said the man didn't bring the right invoice, the correct invoice. Could you believe that? Could you believe this is our sitting president? The president of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana admitting that he had this discussion about about taxes, and if somebody could pay. And according to Azardine said, the president said, pay 25 million, don't pay 50, pay 25. And the president's response was not one, while you had this heading well, Azardine said the president was dishonest and dishonorable. And the president said, Azardine, dishonest. I'm not concerned about that. What I'm concerned about is his admission that they had this conversation. You believe that they could have gone to Granger with that? You believe that they could have gone to Desmond Height or Forbes Board? They couldn't. But this is how the PPP operates. Now he said that the man didn't produce the right thing. It doesn't matter. The point is that the president is now getting involved. He's now getting involved in this process to use his good office to influence whatever the law prescribes. That is the key. He allegedly, based on what he has said, what the president has said, and what Azradin has said, is using his office to influence what the amount of tax, the amount of money. And these guys go out there and they talk that, oh, this man dodging so much tax and he's supposed to pay $1 billion tax. And you engage in such a conversation, and nowhere in that message, nowhere in that WhatsApp message did we see him saying, listen, you have to go to the right authority to look at that. I cannot help you with that. You have to go through the process. You have to go to Stacia. You have to go to those at GRA. That is the decent thing to do. That is the correct thing to do. When you have integrity, when you are honest, if you are honest president and you have integrity, that is what you do. That is the course of action. You cannot engage in such a discussion. Now, we don't know. We're not privy to the telephone conversation. We have to rely on what the Mohammeds are saying and what Ali is saying. But what I saw Ali say is an admission that some discussion took place, and he didn't say, at least I didn't see him say, that he told Azruddin to go to the correct agency, to go to Stacia, to even saying to go to Stacia and using his name would be inappropriate. But what he had to say, if he was decent and honest, you have to say that, look, I can't help you as the president. I cannot use my office to influence this thing. There are laws, there are rules. You have to go to GRA and make your application and let them calculate your tax. That is what you have to do. And so this is totally unacceptable. Totally unacceptable. And they love to talk about sanctions. You know, Dennis, I don't know if you can allow me. I know we're running out of time.
Yes, yes. You
There
go,
was
you
a
go, you go,
development.
MP.
There was a development just this evening as I was preparing for this program. And I know you are out in the fields working as well. And so you probably might have missed it or don't have much information on it. But OFAC, the American agency, has just released a new list of persons being sanctioned. And on that list, there are 4 Guyanese that are associates of the People's Progressive Party. I think we will have to interrogate this in another program. But if the operator can pull those faces up, you know, they were going about talking about sanctions, and they're not talking about their own associates and their own uh, PS being sanctioned. They're not talking about that. Now, these are persons that can be considered associates of the government. At least in that list, that is what I'm being told. And I have seen, well, the first one there is a police officer, a senior ranking police officer. I'm not saying whether he did it or not, but he's sanctioned. You have the one at the bottom right as well. He, as I understand it, was the go-to guy in Buxton. He was the guy being used to pull votes from the PNC. He was the guy being used allegedly to look at grounds and to engage youths. This is the person, and we can see, and we have clips of him with Charles Ramsey. Persons were telling us quietly all along that look, they're using this guy, they're using this character to influence person. Look, there he is. There he is. These are the people that the PPP walk with. These are their friends, their family, their favorites. These are the persons. I keep saying to myself, how can you publicly or even behind the scenes support a government like this? I see some officials going out there to say, oh, they endorse the PPP. This is what you endorse. This is what you are endorsing. You don't see this happening in the PNC. We don't align ourselves with certain characters. We don't engage in certain things. You could say what you want about the PNC and the APNU. We do not engage ourselves with certain characters. But these are the friends, family, and favorites that are being promoted by the People's Progressive Party. Sanctioned only today. Sanctioned only today. I believe the US knows what they are doing. They know exactly what they are doing. For them to sanction 4 new friends of the People's Progressive Party, it says a lot. And this is nothing new for the PPP, you know. This is nothing new. There are pictures with Vice President Bar Jagdeo posing with shady characters. I didn't get to pull it up. You know, they go on Google. I suspect they pay Google some money to remove the thing. There's another picture there with a guy that was given a contract. And this is not, I'm just shifting slightly from the sanction, but I'm just showing the characters that the PPP move with, that they promote. There is a clip there with one that was given a contract in Albaistong. That person, years prior, was charged for the murder of Phantom Informant, one of the Bacchus brothers. And I'm not saying I'm not here to pronounce on whether he did it, whether he's innocent, or whether he's guilty. But this clip was taken from the newspaper. This clip was taken from the newspaper, and we're talking about the person, the male, not the. I'm sorry that no offense. I'm hopeful that we're not offending the woman there, but this is not about her. This is about the guy on the right. I'm not saying whether he did it or not, but I'm telling you, we wouldn't engage in this kind of practice. we wouldn't engage in this kind of practice. This guy was charged along with some others. I think it's relative to one had a what you call it, a funeral home, and there are some allegations about that funeral home with respect to the phantom and what they used to do there. Allegedly, some people say they used to cut up some of the executed persons and store them there until and get rid of them. That is what we're being told, but we don't have the evidence of it. But what I'm saying, these people, these are the characters that the PPP align themselves with, and they promote them. They promote them. He was what you call it, remanded, I believe, remanded, and then you had the case being washed out for lack of evidence, and we know how that goes within the police force. I don't know whether he did it or not, but this is a clip from the newspaper. And so, if we can go back to the sanctioned crew, 4 persons that we're told are associates, friends of the People's Progressive Party, being sanctioned by the United States of America, by a reputable organization. And when these people put out certain things, they have evidence. They usually have evidence. Well, I would like the government of Guyana, Irfan Ali and Bara Jagdeo, to ask them for the evidence as they did for Asruddin. Let them ask for the evidence for their confederates. These guys that are close to them, let them ask for the evidence. And this is not for gold smuggling. This is for drug trafficking. This is for drug trafficking. You didn't see any of this while we were in government. This is the progress that they are talking about. And we can put this in a context of progress and retrogression again. Is this the progress? Well, this is progress for drug traffickers. This is progress for the underworld. This is, I don't know if this is the progress that some who so boldly come out to endorse the PPP. This is what you're endorsing. This is what you're jumping into. You are forming part of that PPP family that are associated with persons who are sanctioned for drug trafficking. That is what you're associating yourself for when we go to the polls. That is why you have this corruption in Guyana. That is why we have so much corruption. That is why we have so much crime. That is why we can't feel the progress that we're supposed to feel, although we have increased our budget 5 times over, because we have a corrupt drug running cabal that associate with persons who are not in good standing with those agencies that look at drug smuggling and other smuggling. Those are the characters that these guys associate themselves with. Those are the people that they promote. And I don't know why any Guyanese would want to vote for such a party. I don't know why any Guyanese would want to return such a party to government. I believe that the electorate are smart. These guys are going to come out, and the PPP, that is, they are going to try to bribe you. They are going to try to dole out some cash in the next couple of months. They are going to tell you all sorts of nonsense about the APNU. They're still living in the APNU shadow, because they know once we get government, they know that we will take care of the people. They know that we will ensure that we deliver cash grants. They know that we will improve the education sector. They know that we will shut down this drug smuggling that is destroying our young people, that is destroying this nation. They know that we will tighten our grip on it. They know that we are going to see real improvement in infrastructure. We have a massive infrastructure plan to link all the regions. We have a riverine community plan that will see roads and other infrastructure along areas like the Pomeroon River. We'll run roads there. We are going to run roads down in the Berbice River. They know of our plans. And so they're going to try to bribe persons. They're going to share a little money here, share a little money there, and to get certain persons that they know don't have integrity, they're going to get them to endorse the PPP, to come out and say, I am with PPP. Well, those 2 dozen or whatever persons wouldn't help them. Those persons wouldn't help their cause because the the majority of Guyanese know what they pass through under this administration. We've seen their corrupt nature. We see who their friends, family, and favorites are and how they rob this nation. And sometimes they boast about all the progress they boasting about. It's the same oil contract, the same oil money that APNU signed. But they're squandering it and they're putting it in certain people's pockets. You see this guy that is at the bottom right there with Ramson, all over with Ramson. And obviously he's been benefiting from this PPP government. Today we see him being sanctioned and many others will be sanctioned. I trust that Guyanese wake up and put their vote in the right place come September 1st.
Thank you very much, MP. When you closed just now, I recognize that you were also at the point of giving your closing remarks because we are at least 4 or 5 minutes in the other program. So I give you a minute to conclude, and then we conclude this program.
All right. What I would say is that I don't want the people to be carried away by these few endorsements. It is part of the PPP plan. You see it every election cycle, where they have persons that might be associated with our party, or even in the past would have been associated maybe 10 years, 20 years ago. And then they put it up, oh, Pharma, APNU, Pharma PNC endorses PPP. This is their game plan. This is what they do every cycle. So don't get, don't be too anxious. Don't get agitated. We are strong. We are confident. We are growing in our numbers. Just a few days ago, I met as chairman. I met with an organization, uh, uh, in fact, two organizations that are willing to come forward and to to join the APNU and to work with us towards building a better Guyana. But we have not been public with it. We do our things in the PNC and in the APNU. We do our things differently. We have a different strategy. We will not follow the PPP in their endorsement madness. Look, they have been taking endorsement from even some shady characters I've seen. They're promoting them. Persons who would have went to jail in the US for fraud and these kinds of things. I see endorsing these people. I see some others who would have done absolutely nothing in 5 years, some who we would have parted company with, and we wish them all the best. We wish them all the best. We've seen this in 2015. Unfortunately, in 2015, some of them jumped right into opposition, and we believe that is exactly what will happen come September 15. The people are not stupid. We have the masses behind us. They know what happened in 5 years. They know how we operated. Our teachers know how we took care of them. Our public servants know how we took care of them. Our pensioners know how we increased the pension. With little money, we still find the time and the care for those people. Uh, the school children know how we provided the bus, the bikes, the boats, and everything, the books for them. the healthcare, those in health, those persons that are associated with the healthcare, they know what we did. They know how we place doctors at every health center, how we improve the health services all across Guyana. The police, how we professionalize the police force. Look, in every sector we made gains from 2015 to 2020, and you can expect 10 times over because we have the resources now, and we will ensure that we take care of all of Guyana. We have a small country in terms of our population, and we have bountiful resources, and we will get the job done. We have a proper plan out there that covers every aspect of governance and covers everybody. Whether you support PPP, you support PNC, APNU, we will cover you. We will ensure that in 5 years' time, when you look back, you will say that we would have delivered to the people of Guyana. That is our vision. That is our commitment. That is our intention when we get government under the leadership of Aubrey Compton Norton. I thank you for having me tonight.
Thank you very much, MP. I think you were excellent tonight, and therefore we want to express our gratitude and thanks to all our viewers. Join us next week at the same time from 18:30 hours to 20 hours to continue breaking down the issues. And next week, you are going to hear a more exciting and a more informed topic that our Member of Parliament, Shadow Minister of Natural Resources, and Chairman of the People's National Congress Reform would speak to you about. Thank you very much. May God bless you and have a blessed night.